Before the bell rings, the village is still sleeping. A slow, hazy breath hangs over the thatched rooftops. As the mist curls through the trees beyond the fields, it is neither dark nor bright, the sort of light that comes when morning is considering whether or not to begin. A rooster makes a half-hearted attempt to announce the day, but no one answers him. Not yet. The houses are squat and crooked, built from timber and stone, leaning into each other like old friends who've forgotten how to stand straight. Their shutters are closed, the windows fogged with the breath of sleep and centuries of smoke. No one rushes here. No one has ever rushed. Inside the homes, the fire from the night before has dwindled to embers. A woman stirs beneath a heavy wool blanket, her breath slow and even. Beside her, a child twitches softly and dreams of sheep or clouds of bread. It's hard to tell the difference in this place. Somewhere near the edge of the village, a cow shifts in its stall. Her ear flicks, more out of habit than irritation. A small brown mouse scampers past her hooves, pausing just long enough to sniff at a fallen oat before vanishing under a board. The cow makes a sound, not quite a moo, not quite a sigh. In the baker's cottage, the flour is still asleep in its sacks. The long wooden spoon leans in a bowl that hasn't been moved since the night before. Even the bread dough, started late last evening, rests beneath a damp cloth as if it too knows that the day hasn't quite begun. Outside, the path through the village is soft with dew. The ruts from cartwheels hold tiny puddles reflecting the pale sky. A crow hops from one to another, inspecting its own reflection with mild disapproval. Somewhere in the trees, a wood pigeon coos, low, round, and utterly unconcerned. The church bell hasn't rung yet. It is still hanging there in the squat little bell tower at the center of the village, a tower made of old, crumbling stones and covered in ivy that no one remembers planting. The bell itself hasn't moved since yesterday evening, when it tolled 5 times to remind the villagers to stop whatever they were doing and start slowly heading home. It will ring again soon, but not yet. Inside a barn, a boy of perhaps 12 stirs beneath a scratchy wool blanket. He opens one eye, then the other. He scratches his nose and turns over. He is not a boy with anywhere to be in a hurry. His job today, like every other day, is to fetch a small cart and walk to the mill and back. It will take most of the morning and a good part of the afternoon, not because the journey is far, but because there is no real reason to be fast. He yawns, stretches, and sits up. A pigeon on the rafters above watches him and coos disapprovingly. He replies with a half-smile and tosses a piece of hay in its direction. It flutters once and resettles without further comment. The barn smells like straw and earth and last summer's sun, all mixed into something warm and dry and old. Dust dances in the air, turning gold where the first real sunlight sneaks through the slats. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once, not urgently, just a reminder that it exists. The boy stands, barefoot, and pads over to the door. He pushes it open and lets in the morning air, which smells faintly of damp wood, wet stone, and the gentle smoke of a fire being kindled in the baker's hearth. Not much else, just quiet and freshness, and the sort of silence that belongs to places untouched by time. He steps outside, stretching again, and walks slowly toward the little shed where the cart waits. The wood is dry and worn smooth from years of small, slow journeys. The wheels creak slightly as he tilts it forward and begins pulling it toward the path. Behind him, the village is beginning to move. A shutter opens. A hen hops out of a coop. A woman throws out dishwater into the grass. A sleepy man in a loose tunic walks with his head tilted back, yawning to the sky. A dog runs past, carrying something that might once have been a boot. Still, no one speaks much yet. The sun has not yet fully claimed the rooftops. The wind is still deciding which direction to take. The bell is still waiting to ring, and so the village stretches, blinks, and continues waking very, very slowly. The road and the river. The cart creaks. It's not an urgent sound, more like the sleepy groan of old wood that knows it's being asked to do the same job it did yesterday, and the day before that. The boy walks slowly ahead of it, bare feet squishing slightly on the damp path. The ground is soft this morning. Last night's mist has settled in every crack and puddle, and the earth hasn't decided whether it wants to be mud today. His name, though no one says it often, is Tom. Or maybe Will. Names tend to blur in a village like this, but for now, let's call him Tom. Tom has walked this road many times, from the barn, past the bakery, across the little stone bridge that hums quietly with moss, and out to the old river mill. The journey isn't far, but it takes time, because there are snails to watch, stones to kick, and occasionally a rabbit on the path who deserves a full moment of observation before being allowed to scamper off into the brush. The sun has finally made up its mind and begun peeking out between the trees. Thin shafts of light dapple the path, casting long shadows of branches that sway gently in the morning breeze. It's not warm yet, but it will be, probably, eventually. The village is behind him now, shrinking gently into the horizon. Its thatched roofs barely peek over the rise in the hill, and the little bell tower stands like a sleepy old sentinel. It still hasn't rung. Ahead, the path curves toward the river. Not fast, not straight, but with the slow grace of something that has always been there. A few birds flutter across the way, their wings making soft sounds like parchment being turned too slowly to matter. Tom stops for a moment to watch one hop across the grass. It picks at something invisible, gives up, and flaps away. To the left, fields stretch lazily. Sheep are scattered like lumps of forgotten wool, grazing without intent. A shepherd leans on a crooked stick nearby, barely moving. He's looking at nothing in particular, just the sky, or the shape of the wind, or a thought that wandered into his head and hasn't quite left. Tom waves. The shepherd doesn't see him, or maybe he does, but decides not to wave back. Either way, nothing changes. The cart creaks again. They come to the bridge, a small arch of lichen-covered stone, worn smooth by footsteps and time. Water trickles beneath it, calm and dark, carrying leaves and twigs in its slow, meandering current. The river here isn't grand. It doesn't rush. It just moves, steady, patient, like a long breath exhaled over centuries. Tom stops at the middle of the bridge and rests his hands on the mossy stones. He peers down at the water and sees his reflection, rippling, blinking back at him. A frog plops into the shallows nearby. It makes no effort to hide, as if confident no one is in much of a hurry to bother it. A dragonfly buzzes past, shimmering in the sunlight like a jewel that doesn't know how valuable it looks. It hovers, dips, moves on. Tom reaches into the cart and takes out a small heel of bread wrapped in cloth. It's a little dry now, a little hard, left over from yesterday, but it's good enough. He tears off a piece and chews slowly, looking out across the fields, the trees, the sky that's finally begun to blush with proper daylight. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls. Once, twice, 3 times. Tom counts, softly, to himself. It rings 5 more times, then silence. 8 chimes in total. He nods once, to no one in particular. It's official now. Morning has arrived. Back on the path, the trees grow taller, their branches bending overhead to form a kind of sleepy tunnel. Birds hop among them, rustling leaves and occasionally chirping with mild annoyance. A squirrel darts along a branch, scolds the wind, and vanishes into a nest of twigs. The cart continues to creak. Tom continues to walk. There is no one else on the road, and he doesn't mind. The road doesn't mind either. It just keeps stretching ahead, full of turns that aren't trying to surprise anyone. Soon the sound of the mill begins to rise, not loudly, just a slow, steady thrum. The wheel turns with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Water laps against its base. Wooden paddles dip into the stream and lift again, dripping in slow arcs. A dove coos from a window above. The miller hasn't come out yet. He probably will eventually, but Tom doesn't need him right away. He walks around to the side, parks the cart beside the steps, and sits down on a patch of grass. The blades here are damp and cool and just tall enough to tickle. He leans back on his elbows and looks at the sky. No clouds, no rush, no sounds except the mill and the river and the occasional squawk of a duck that believes it owns the shoreline. He lies back fully now, arms folded under his head, the cart beside him, the bread in his belly, and the morning almost fully born. It's not a busy road. It's not an exciting road. But it's his road. And for now, that's more than enough. Inside the bakery, the smell comes first. Before your eyes are fully open, before your feet touch the floor, before the sun has cleared the hills, the smell arrives. It seeps under doors and around shutters. It curls into wool blankets and settles into wooden beams. It is warm and soft and smells of bread. Not just any bread. Fresh bread. Morning bread. Bread that has just begun to rise in a quiet oven before the rest of the world is ready for it. The baker, whose name might be Elsie, though it could just as easily be Joan, is already awake. She has been awake for hours, or perhaps she never really slept. Bakers often drift between the world of sleep and the world of firelight, waking only when the dough says it's time. Her hands are covered in flour. So is her apron. So is the cat, who has taken to sleeping on the sack of grain nearest the window. She doesn't shoo it away anymore. It doesn't eat much, and its purring seems to keep the dough from rising too quickly. The bakery is not large. It is a single room, thick with the smell of yeast and heat. The ceiling is low, and wooden beams stretch across it like the ribs of a giant long-forgotten ship. A small fire crackles beneath the oven, not roaring, but steady, dependable. A good baking fire doesn't shout. It hums. On the stone table in the center, mounds of dough wait patiently beneath linen cloths. Some are rounded, others long, and a few braided with care that suggests more love than necessity. There's no rush. There never is. The bread will be ready when it's ready, and not a moment before. Elsie, or Joan, kneads a new batch slowly. Her hands move in a rhythm known only to those who have done it for years. Push, fold, turn, press, again and again. The dough sighs beneath her touch, stretching gently, relaxing, like it knows it's in good hands. Outside the bakery's small window, the light begins to shift. Patches of golden morning slip through the mist. A bird sings from the chimney's edge, a quiet, hesitant tune, like it's still deciding whether or not to join the day. The baker hums. She doesn't know the tune. It doesn't matter. It's not a song for anyone else. Just something for the dough, something to keep her hands company. A bell above the door jingles, barely. The sound is old, more creak than chime. A small boy peeks in, wide-eyed and barefoot. He looks like he ran here without meaning to. "Bread's not done yet," the baker says without turning. The boy nods solemnly, as if he already knew that, but needed to hear it anyway. He sits on the stool by the door and watches her work. She doesn't mind. People often come here just to sit, to warm their fingers, to breathe in the smell, to wait for something they can't quite name. In the corner, the cat yawns and stretches, then curls back into the sack of grain. The fire pops once, a soft reminder that it's still working. A wisp of flour drifts through the air, catching a beam of light like a speck of snow floating sideways. The baker slides a tray into the oven. The crusts from earlier are already beginning to crackle. You can hear it, a faint whispering sound, like tiny voices speaking in dough. She closes the door gently and wipes her hands on her apron. Outside, footsteps begin to gather. Not many, just a few. Quiet ones. The baker glances up. She knows the rhythm of these feet. Old Father Garin with his walking stick, Anna from the weaver's hut, young Thistle, who always pretends she's buying bread for someone else. They won't knock, they won't speak, they'll just wait. Because here, in this bakery, on this morning, like all mornings, things take their time. The bread rises, the fire hums, the air is warm and thick with stories that no one needs to tell. And the village? It waits, as it always has, for the smell of fresh bread to drift down the road and say gently, "The day has begun." Mark it without much trouble. The path to the village square is uneven, not in a dangerous way, just a little wonky. Stones laid centuries ago peek out through patches of dirt and moss, each one worn smooth by generations of boots, hooves, and the occasional wooden wheel. Chickens wander freely, as if they've forgotten which coop they came from. A dog watches them with polite disinterest, yawns, and lays its head back on its paws. It's market day, but that doesn't mean much around here. There are no shouting vendors, no clamor, no crowds pushing shoulder to shoulder, just a few villagers in layered wool and patched linen, strolling slowly with baskets under their arms, more interested in conversation than commerce. The sun has risen fully now. Its light is soft and golden, slanting across the thatched rooftops and warming the stones beneath. The air smells of bread crust, apples, and damp herbs drying in bundles. Somewhere a goat bleats. No one responds. At the edge of the square, an old woman sets out jars of honey. She moves carefully, as if each jar is filled not with liquid, but with some delicate memory. The honey glows amber in the sun, thick, slow, and sweet. She doesn't speak, but smiles at anyone who looks away, and the smile is enough. Next to her, a man arranges bunches of lavender and mint. His hands are stained green from the stems, and his fingernails hold traces of soil. He hums softly, a tune with no words, as he ties the herbs into bundles using scraps of worn ribbon. A little further down, a young girl, no older than 10, sits behind a crate of eggs. She doesn't try to sell them. She just sits, swinging her legs and watching the world pass with the thoughtful expression of someone who knows more than she lets on. Occasionally, she pats the side of the crate, reminding the eggs not to roll. In the center of the square stands the well. It's old, older than the village, some say, and its stones are covered in moss and pale lichen. A long-handled bucket leans against it, resting in the shade. No one is drawing water just now. It's not the time for that. Beside the well, a man with a long gray beard sells apples. Or rather, he stands next to a cart filled with apples and occasionally offers one to someone he knows. Most of the apples are a little bruised, a little soft, but no one minds. They're village apples after all, familiar and good enough. Across the square, a stall covered in faded blue cloth displays thread and buttons, all mismatched and lovely. The woman behind it, wearing a shawl full of pins and patches, is more interested in gossip than sewing. She talks with the miller's wife about the weather, which hasn't changed much in a week, and the chickens, which keep wandering into the church garden, just as she's describing the peculiar behavior of one particularly bossy hen. That very bird struts into the market. Feathers puffed, eyes sharp, a queen in her own mind, she makes a beeline for the herb stall, pecks once at a sprig of thyme, and waddles away with no apology. The herb seller shrugs and gives her a nod of respect. No one tries to stop her. She's done this before. The market moves slowly. People come and go. They speak in low voices. They smell a melon, tap a cheese, trade a pot for a spool of yarn. They say, "Isn't that a fine loaf? And you've grown taller." And "Tell your gran I said hello." No one is in a rush. No one is waiting for anything urgent. Even the wind, soft and meandering, seems to wander through the square as if it might sit down and rest a while. Eventually the baker arrives with a basket of warm loaves tucked in linen. The smell follows her like a cloud of comfort. She places them on the edge of the fountain wall. No sign, no price. People drift over one at a time, offer her a nod or a smile or a wedge of soft cheese in exchange. The church bell rings once, not loud, not long, just a single tone, enough to say the sun is high now and the market continues, just as it always has, slow, warm, full of people who don't need to buy much and wouldn't mind if they didn't buy anything at all. Because in this village, the market is not about things. It's about time. And here, time moves gently. The bishop's cat. The bishop's house sits just beside the church. It's not a grand house. Not here, not in this village. It's made of smooth, pale stone and roofed in gray slate. Vines grow up the sides like they've always belonged, curling around the small arched windows and peeking in as if checking on an old friend. Inside, the rooms are cool and quiet, full of soft light and the smell of candle wax, ink, and old wool robes hung neatly behind wooden doors. Nothing happens here in a hurry. Even the dust falls slowly, drifting through sunbeams like it's forgotten which way is down. The bishop is a gentle man. He walks with a slow gait and a crooked back, leaning ever so slightly to one side like a book that's been opened too many times. He wears thick wool robes even in spring and speaks in a voice like soft cloth, never raised, never rushed. He spends most of his days copying lines of Latin into a book no one reads and feeding the small birds that tap at his windowsill each morning. But today, something is missing, or rather, someone. The bishop's cat. Her name is Lady Marjorie, though no one knows if she answers to it. She's striped gray and white, with one eye always half closed in suspicion and the other wide with curiosity. She's lived in the bishop's house for as long as anyone can remember, though no one is quite sure when she arrived. Most days, she naps on the bishop's cushion while he writes. Other times, she disappears for hours and returns smelling of the bakery or hay or beeswax, depending on where she's been snooping. But this morning, the bishop rose, made his tea, adjusted his spectacles, opened his book, and noticed the cushion was empty. He waited a while, of course. She often slept late, or early, or in someone else's window. But as the sun crept across the floor and the ink in his pot grew cold, he sighed and stood. Lady Marjorie was gone. He didn't panic. He was not the panicking type. Instead, he folded his robe properly, lit a candle even though it was morning, and began his slow walk through the house, just in case she'd curled up somewhere new. He checked under the bench beside the hearth. He opened the linen cupboard. He looked behind the wooden chest where she sometimes chased shadows. No cat. So he stepped outside. The village, as usual, was calm. A soft breeze carried the scent of bread crusts and sheep. The market had begun to thin out, and a few hens wandered lazily near the square. The bishop walked with care, nodding to each villager he passed. "Have you seen Lady Marjorie?" he asked in his quiet way. Most simply smiled and shook their heads. One boy pointed toward the herb stall. A woman suggested the cloister. Someone else said she'd been seen near the apothecary, though they couldn't be sure. The bishop continued his search, not hurriedly, just steadily. His footsteps made soft sounds on the worn stone paths. He paused now and then to inspect sunny patches where a cat might choose to nap. He peered into doorways, checked fence posts, and murmured her name into the shadows. "Marjorie," he whispered, as if saying it too loudly might disturb the peace of the village. No reply. Eventually, he made his way to the cloister. The garden there was full of rosemary and thyme, with low stone benches and buzzing bees. A monk raked sand in a wide circle, one line at a time. Another trimmed ivy from the chapel wall with the quiet precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. The bishop paused, listened. Then a sound, faint, familiar, a single, stubborn meow. He turned slowly and looked toward the far end of the garden where a collection of scrolls had been left near the chapel's old storage room. There, behind a curtain of drying lavender, 2 eyes blinked at him, one sleepy, one suspicious. Lady Marjorie. She stepped forward with the offended elegance only a cat can manage, as if to say, "I was never lost. You were simply unaware of my location." The bishop nodded, accepting her rebuke with grace. He bent, slowly, and scooped her into his arms. She didn't resist, but she didn't purr either. She allowed herself to be carried like royalty returned to court. They walked back together, the bishop humming softly, and Lady Marjorie blinking slowly at the world as it passed. Back home, he placed her gently on the cushion beside his desk. She stretched once, turned in a full circle, and settled into a perfect loaf. The bishop dipped his quill into fresh ink, exhaled, and began again. "In the beginning?" Lady Marjorie closed both eyes. All was well again. The smithy sleeps. The forge is never completely silent. Even when no one is working, it hums gently. There's a kind of quiet heat to it, not the fierce, blazing kind of heat used for great battles or rushing armies, but a deep, steady warmth that sinks into the stone walls and stays there, tucked between the soot and the iron, like an old story that never quite fades. The village blacksmith is a man named Tompkin, or perhaps Hugh. Most just call him Smith. He's wide in the shoulders, quiet in the eyes, and moves with the deliberate calm of someone who knows metal better than most know people. Today, Tompkin isn't hammering. There's no need. No one's horse has thrown a shoe. No noble has arrived in need of armor. No one in the village is in a terrible rush for hinges or nails or latches. So the forge rests, not empty, just calm. A thin trail of smoke rises from the chimney where a coal fire still flickers gently, more out of habit than demand. The bellows, large and leathery, lean against the wall, unused for now. They wheeze softly every time a breeze sneaks in through the cracks in the door, but no one minds. The forge, like everything else in this village, breathes at its own pace. Inside, an apprentice sits on a stool. His name is Edric, or Alfie. He's 14, perhaps 15, old enough to work, but not yet old enough to be trusted with the fire. His job today is to polish a rack of iron tools that haven't been used in a week and might not be used for another. He doesn't mind. He hums a little as he works, just enough to keep the silence company. The tools glint dully in the dim light. Not sharp, not new, just reliable. There are hammers of all shapes, tongs of every length, a pair of bent calipers, and something that might once have been part of a wagon. Edric takes a cloth, dips it in oil, and moves slowly from piece to piece, rubbing each one in wide, lazy circles. The sunlight filters in through a high window, striking the floating dust just so. Motes drift through the air like soft sparks, too sleepy to fall quickly. The air smells of old ash, metal, and warm straw. Somewhere above the rafters, a bird chirps once and then decides against any further announcements. Tompkin is in the back room, mending a wooden tool handle. His large hands move slowly, carefully shaving slivers from a branch with a curved blade. He doesn't speak. He rarely does. But he hums, low and tuneless, and the hum rumbles gently through the stones beneath his boots. Outside, a single customer appears, an old farmer with a wheelbarrow missing a bolt. He enters, sees Edric, and nods. Edric puts down his cloth, retrieves the proper tool, and crouches beside the cart. He tightens the bolt, wipes away the rust, and gives the wheel a gentle spin. It squeaks, not badly, just enough to be noticed. "Better now," says the farmer, though it's hard to tell if he's talking to Edric or the cart or himself. Edric nods once. The farmer hands him a small cloth bag containing 2 eggs and a twist of salt. Payment. The boy accepts it solemnly, as he's been taught, and places it on the shelf beside a small jug of oil and a bundle of feathers someone once left in thanks for a door hinge. Later, the forge grows quiet again. Edric finishes polishing and places the tools back in their proper places. He sweeps the floor, careful not to stir up too much dust. The broom is old and uneven, but it still works, like most things in the village. Tompkin emerges from the back, glances around, nods once, and sits on his stool. He picks up a small horseshoe, one he's already repaired twice, and begins to smooth its edge for no particular reason. The fire crackles once softly, the bellows sigh, and the village smithy goes on sleeping, not with its eyes closed, but with its heart slow and steady. Here, the metal doesn't need to sing, it just needs to wait. Soup that takes all day. The village cook is not in a hurry. She rarely is. Her name is Mistress Hilda, or maybe Matilda. No one is entirely sure because she's been called cook for so long that even she might have forgotten the rest. She lives in a squat, smoke-stained cottage with a chimney that leans ever so slightly to the left and a door that always sticks unless you lift it just so. Inside, the air is always warm, not hot, not stifling, but warm in the way that makes your shoulders relax and your belly rumble. The walls are hung with bundles of herbs, rosemary, thyme, sage, lavender, all slowly drying in their own time. A wooden shelf runs the length of one wall, lined with jars of mysterious contents: dried beans, fat cloves of garlic, cracked peppercorns, yellow peas, old apples, and a small dignified onion with a single green sprout leaning toward the window. In the middle of the room stands a wide hearth, and in that hearth a pot. It is not a fancy pot, it is not a clean pot, but it is the pot. Large, round, black with age, and as familiar to the villagers as the bell tower or the bakery. It rests on a hook above a steady low fire and breathes steam into the air with every quiet bubble. This pot is not used for fast cooking, no frying, no searing, just soup. Long, slow, quiet soup. Mistress Hilda stirs it with a spoon that may be older than the village itself. The handle has been worn to the shape of her hand over years of use. It doesn't really stir any more, so much as nudge, round and round once every few minutes, as the contents settle and rise in a rhythm all their own. Today's soup is made of, well, no one really knows. A little barley, a piece of turnip, some lentils, a bone from yesterday which still had a bit of kindness left in it, a sprig of thyme, perhaps a whisper of cabbage if you believe in such things. It's not important what's in it. It's the way it's made. Outside, the day moves along. Slowly, children walk past the window, speaking in hushed voices as though the smell of the soup is holy. A man brings a carrot and places it gently by the door. An old woman with a crooked back offers a scrap of salted pork wrapped in linen. No one says much. No one asks. They just add to the pot, the way their parents did and their grandparents before them. And the soup grows. Not louder, not richer, just deeper, more itself. Mistress Hilda hums, the same 4 notes she always hums when the soup reaches its middle stage, a tune older than the bricks in her floor. She sits beside the hearth, wrapped in a shawl, and watches the steam curl upward like a ribbon of memory. A fly buzzes half-heartedly, bouncing against the glass of the window. The cat, not Lady Marjorie this time, but a scruffy black and white thing called Buttons, lounges on a rug, one paw stretched out into the warmth. A loaf of yesterday's bread sits on the table, beside a bowl and spoon, waiting to be used again. In the afternoon, someone knocks. It's the blacksmith's apprentice, Edric. He holds out a handful of fresh mint and a cracked clay cup of water. Mistress Hilda nods approvingly and drops the mint into the pot without a word. The soup hisses, releases a new breath of fragrance, and returns to its gentle simmer. Edric sits on the step and listens to the sound of bubbling. "Smells different today," he says. Mistress Hilda shrugs. It always does. They say nothing else for a while. There's no need. By evening, the soup is ready. Not because it boiled, not because it was timed, but because it knows. One by one, villagers come by. A spoonful here, a bowl there. Children bring wooden ladles. Old men bring crusts of bread. No one takes much. No one asks for seconds. They eat slowly near the fire or out on the step, and they all say the same thing. It tastes like something I forgot I missed. And Mistress Hilda, or Matilda, just smiles and stirs again. The pot will stay on the fire through the night. Tomorrow's soup will begin from what's left of today's. And so it goes, day after day, bowl after bowl. A soup that takes all day and maybe all of time to make. Wind in the cloister. At the far end of the village, beyond the last row of houses, past the quiet orchard where the pears ripen slowly and fall without sound, sits the cloister. It is a low stone place, not grand, not imposing, just there, as it has always been. Its arches are wide and shallow, softened by time and moss. Ivy clings to the columns. The bells, when they ring, do so softly, as if not to disturb the air too much. Inside the walls, time walks a little differently, more slowly, more thoughtfully. The stones beneath your feet are worn smooth, each step echoing faintly and then fading. The air smells of dust, beeswax, and crushed herbs. Somewhere nearby, someone turns the page of a book, a soft parchment whisper. And everywhere there is the wind. It does not howl or rush. It sighs. A soft breeze moves through the open cloister garden, ruffling the corners of old tunics and nudging the leaves of thyme and sage that grow in neat, low rows. The wind weaves between the columns, brushing past the monks as they move, not interrupting, just reminding them that the world still breathes. Brother Odo, or perhaps Brother Anselm, kneels by the rosemary beds. His knees are wrapped in thick wool, his hands bare and lined like carved wood. He pulls a weed slowly, carefully, and sets it aside without fanfare. A bee hovers near his ear for a moment, then bumbles off toward the lavender. He nods to it as if in greeting. In the scriptorium, the air is still. Brother Martin copies a psalm with ink that smells faintly of iron. His quill moves in long, elegant lines across the page. His breathing matches the strokes. He does not look up. He does not need to. The wind comes in through the high, open window, curls gently around his lamp flame, and continues on its way. Behind him, shelves groan softly beneath the weight of old tomes. Some of them haven't been opened in years. Some may never be opened again, but they stay, like sleeping thoughts, bound in leather and cloth and dust, humming in their silence. A bell chimes once, midday. The sound rolls through the cloister like a ripple on still water. No one rushes. A few monks rise from their work. Others pause. Some bow their heads. Some do nothing at all. Brother Odo stands and brushes the soil from his hands. He stretches his back and walks the long way around the garden to the refectory. Not because he must, but because the long way is quieter. As he walks, the wind follows him, curling around his robes, lifting the hem gently, slipping into the folds like a secret. The cloister is not a place of events. Nothing dramatic happens here. No one shouts. No one runs. The most exciting thing this week was a bird's nest discovered in the corner of the bell tower. 3 tiny blue eggs, perfectly still. A few younger monks stop by daily to look. They speak in whispers. They leave bits of oat and thread. The bird tolerates them. Evening comes slowly to the cloister. Shadows grow long beneath the arches. The wind quiets further, content to rest among the stones. Candles are lit one by one, a small ritual with flint and care and slow fingers. Their glow flickers against the walls, casting halos on the worn stone saints and faded frescoes. Brother Martin finishes his page. Brother Odo waters the mint. Someone sings, low and wordless, from the chapel steps. No one speaks, but everything says something. The cloister listens, and when the final bell tolls, just once, a small note in the dark, the wind slips out again, past the orchard and the well, back into the world beyond the garden walls. It will return tomorrow. It always does. Sunset, over the thatch evening, doesn't arrive in the village all at once. It seeps in slowly, like warm water into cloth, gentle, unhurried, and almost unnoticed. First, the shadows stretch, then the rooftops blush, then the sounds begin to change. The blackbirds fall quiet, the sheep settle into soft piles on the hills. Even the breeze lowers its voice. One by one, windows begin to glow. The light is golden now, not the gold of coins or fire, but the soft kind that spills from a low sun when it dips just enough to kiss the tops of chimneys. It slides across the thatch, brushing over the rooftops like a hand through hair, warming the moss and the spiderwebs and the crooked corners no one bothers to fix. Children's laughter fades into murmurs. Wooden toys are forgotten into grass. A spinning hoop rolls once more, wobbles, and falls still by the well. The village exhales. In the fields beyond the last cottage, a farmer leans on his hoe. He's not working anymore. He's watching. The sky has begun to shift, not just in color, but in texture, like a wool blanket stretched across the clouds. Pinks and grays, oranges and lavender tones. He smiles softly, wipes his hands on his tunic, and heads home, his boots making slow, squelching sounds on the path. The baker pulls the last loaf from the oven, not to sell, just to keep the warmth in her kitchen through the night. She sets it on the sill, where the crust crackles gently, and the smell joins the fading scent of thyme and coal smoke in the evening air. The forge door creaks shut. The market stalls stand empty. The church bell rings once, low and long. Inside one house, a woman trims the wick of an oil lamp. The flame flutters for a moment, then settles into a steady glow. She places it in the window, not to see by, but simply because it's what her mother used to do. A man sets 3 bowls on a table, not 4, not 5, just 3. He doesn't call anyone. They'll come when they're ready. A cat, not Buttons, not Marjorie, but a third nameless one, hops onto a stool by the hearth, kneads the cushion twice, and curls up with its back to the fire. And outside, the shutters begin to close, one by one, like eyes growing heavy. On the hill above the village, the trees catch the last of the sunlight. Their leaves shimmer softly, like gold thread and green cloth. A pair of crows flap lazily toward the forest, not in a rush, not with purpose, just because it's time. The path that led the boy and his cart to the mill is empty now. His wheel tracks have gone soft in the damp earth. A single boot print remains by the bridge, filled with the reflection of the sky. A dog barks once, then stops. Somewhere, a door latches. Somewhere else, someone hums. As the last edge of the sun disappears behind the hills, the whole village seems to pause, not for drama, not for ceremony, just to notice. The kind of pause that comes when the sky grows still and every sound, even the quiet ones, feels rounder, fuller, softer. Soon the stars will come, but not yet. For now, there is only the thatch rooftops bathed in dusk, the last curls of chimney smoke rising lazily into the air, and the comforting weight of a day that asked for very little and gave even less in return, except a long sigh and a safe place to sleep. Night, beneath the rafters. Night in the village does not fall. It settles, like flour through a sieve, like a shawl across old shoulders, soft, deliberate, complete. The last embers crackle gently in hearths across the village. The orange light casts long, sleepy shapes against stone walls and wooden beams, dancing lazily before they too fade into rest. Candles have been blown out, one by one, with small puffs of breath and whispered thoughts. Not prayers exactly, just little wishes for a quiet night. Above the low thatched cottages, stars emerge in clusters, not hurriedly, not all at once, just a few at first, then a few more, until the sky becomes a quilt of silver stitches, wrapped tightly around the rooftops. Inside, the rafters creak, not from wind, not from footsteps, just from the memory of the day, the kind of creak that houses make when they're relaxing too. In one cottage, a baby sighs in her sleep. In another, an old man dreams of fishing, though he hasn't seen a river in years. Someone shifts under a blanket. Someone else snores gently, not loudly, just enough to mark the rhythm of rest. A draft sneaks in through a loose shutter. It rustles the corner of a blanket, brushes against a stocking hung to dry, and slips away again with a sound like shh. The dog by the hearth lifts its head, listens, then curls back into its paws without concern. In the small wooden attic above the bakery, a mouse scurries between the beams. It pauses to sniff a curl of crust tucked into a corner. It eats slowly, politely, and leaves half behind. Even the mice in this village know there's time for everything. Down below, the baker snores softly. A loaf cools in the shadows. In the church, the candle in the nave still flickers. Just one. It was meant to be put out an hour ago, but no one minds. The bishop, wrapped in his thick robe, has fallen asleep in his chair, a small book resting on his chest, and Lady Marjorie curled across his lap like a scarf with claws. She opens one eye, sees nothing urgent, sleeps again. Up on the hill the cloister is dark. The monks sleep in rows, peaceful, warm, and still. Only Brother Martin stirs slightly in his cot, whispering something in Latin that no one will ever hear, not even himself. His candle has long since gone out, but the smell of beeswax still lingers in the air, soft and clean. The wind returns, not strong, not cold, just enough to run its fingers through the long grass and stroke the eaves of every roof with a quiet, familiar touch, and the stars shine brighter. No one walks the village paths now. The well is still. The mill wheel has stopped. Even the hens who often fuss in their dreams are quiet tonight. Only the owls remain, 2 of them, perched on opposite ends of the bell tower. They do not hoot. They only blink once and then again, in slow, thoughtful silence. The night is complete. The village sleeps. And under the rafters, above the bread, the tools, the books, and the dreams, time breathes in and out, in no hurry at all. Dreams from the orchard. There's a hill just outside the village, not too tall, not too steep. Atop that hill sits the orchard. It is not fenced. It is not numbered. The trees know where to stand. They've been growing there longer than anyone remembers, spreading their arms in quiet rows, season after season. Their trunks twist in slow spirals, knotted with age, moss clinging in soft patches like old stories that refuse to fade. And tonight, as the village sleeps, the orchard dreams with them. The moon has risen, round and pale, like a lantern hung low in the sky. It casts long shadows between the trees, silvering the grass, kissing the apples that hang like ornaments not yet plucked. A breeze drifts through, cool and faintly sweet. It rustles the leaves. It stirs the tall grass at the orchard's edge. It nudges a wooden ladder, long forgotten, leaning gently against the oldest tree. Nothing startles, nothing rushes. Even the wind yawns as it passes. And down in the village below, people dream. Dreams rise like mist, drifting up from warm beds, sliding through chimneys and floating toward the orchard. Quiet visitors with no feet and no sound. There's young Edric, the smith's apprentice, dreaming of a bell that sings instead of rings. He turns in his sleep, and in his dream the bell grows wings and hums above the cloister garden, pollinating the rosemary. Mistress Hilda dreams of her soup, not bubbling in a pot, but growing in the earth like a vine, with ladles instead of leaves. The soup smells like every good day she has ever known. She smiles in her sleep. The bishop dreams of a cathedral made entirely of candlelight, glowing, flickering, weightless. He walks through it without making a sound. Lady Marjorie dreams, too, of a mouse wearing spectacles, offering her a seat at a very small table. The market girl with the basket of eggs? She dreams she is one of the eggs, safe, warm, waiting to become something. In the orchard, the trees rustle softly. They don't speak, not exactly, but they murmur to each other, to the stars, to the dreams that hover just above the grass. They remember things, old things, like winters that cracked their bark and springs that rained for weeks. They remember the children who once climbed them, the first swing ever tied with a bit of rope, the cider barrel that rolled away and never returned. And as they remember, the apples sway. Some fall, just a few. They don't thump, they don't bounce. They land in the grass like thoughts being put gently aside. A fox trots between the trunks, slow, thin, careful. Its nose lifts. It pauses. It hears something only foxes can hear. A snore from the miller's house, perhaps. Or the flap of a loose shutter. It flicks its tail and vanishes. And still the dreams float. They drift among the branches like fireflies too tired to shine. One catches on a twig, turns into a melody, and hums itself back down the hill. Another becomes a scent of cinnamon or parchment or plum jam. It curls into the folds of someone's pillow. Far away, a rooster stirs, not ready yet, just checking. A few stars blink their last. The moon sighs. The grass dampens with dew. And in the orchard, the trees yawn without moving. The dreams begin to drift back to where they came from, to beds and blankets, to minds that will barely remember them. The apples hang a little lower. The wind hushes even further, and the world waits, not for anything grand, not for anything loud, just for the next breath. A very slow morning. The morning doesn't arrive with trumpets in this village. It arrives with a whisper. A pale gray light filters in through shutters left slightly ajar. A rooster, half asleep, remembers to crow, but only once, and not particularly loudly. The mist clings to the grass like a blanket, reluctant to be pulled away. And in the homes tucked beneath their mossy roofs, the people begin to stir, not all at once, not quite awake, but stirring like porridge over a low fire. Inside Mistress Hilda's cottage, the hearth grumbles back to life. She doesn't rush it. She never does. The coals are nudged, not poked. A log is placed, not tossed. She hums a little as she waits, the same 4 notes as always rising like steam from a cup of tea. The pot, still sitting from the night before, is stirred lazily, today's soup will begin with yesterday's thoughts. Outside her door, the first soft footstep pattered down the lane, a child with sleep in their eyes and a crust of bread in one hand, walking nowhere in particular. The chickens have begun to hop from their perches, flapping indifferently into the straw. One of them pecks a pebble, then thinks better of it. The cloister bells ring twice, that's all. Just two gentle notes to say, the sun is thinking about rising. Brother Martin stretches beneath his woolen blanket and blinks at the ceiling for a full minute before deciding he still has time to do nothing. Brother Odo is already awake, kneeling in the herb garden in his thick-soled shoes, watching a snail cross a leaf. Not helping, not moving it, just watching. It's good for the snail to take its time. It's good for the monk, too. In the bakery, the oven has begun to warm. Not hot yet, just warm. Just enough to chase away the chill and toast the memory of yesterday's bread. The baker sips tea that's gone a little cold, nods to her cat, still asleep on a sack of flour, and folds her apron with one hand while reaching for a bowl with the other. She may bake today, or not. There's no rush. The market isn't open yet, but it's thinking about it. At the forge, the bellows haven't sighed. The fire is still dark. Edric, curled in a blanket on the stool, dreams of iron that floats and anvils that hum lullabies. The bishop stands by his window, holding his cup with both hands. He's watching the sky the same way he's done for decades, not expecting anything in particular, just greeting it. Lady Marjorie, as usual, has taken his chair. He doesn't ask her to move. Somewhere someone drops a ladle. It clatters onto a stone floor and echoes longer than expected. But no one minds. No one hurries to pick it up. The mist begins to lift, not quickly, not all the way, just enough to let the thatched roofs show their faces again, just enough for the apple trees to stretch, and the village exhales. Another day begins, but slowly, stretching like a cat, blinking like an old lamp, comfortable in its slowness, grateful for the stillness. There is soup to warm and herbs to trim. There are no crises, only a rooster that finally decides to crow again, and someone down the lane whistling a tune so old no one remembers the words. The baker lines them up on a wide shelf, each one leaning slightly against the next, like friends who've dozed off together. Crusts crackle as they cool. The air smells of warmth and patience. No one buys one. No one needs to. They'll come by eventually, when the day leans further forward and bellies begin to think again. The bishop walks along the edge of the garden, hands behind his back. Lady Marjorie follows at a distance, as if she doesn't want it to seem like she's following. They walk the long way around the same path he walked yesterday, and the day before that. The bishop nods at a daisy. The daisy does not respond, but it doesn't need to. At the forge, Edric finally wakes. He stretches, yawns like a door creaking open, and looks around at the tools lying neatly on the wall. He thinks about striking the bellows, then thinks better of it. He polishes a horseshoe instead, one that's already shiny. The fire stays cold. It doesn't mind. And so the day drifts on, not forward, not upward, just on. Nothing much happens. No one announces anything. No one rushes. A cart passes slowly down the lane, not delivering, not collecting, just passing. A door opens and closes again. Not because of wind, just curiosity. And somewhere, maybe everywhere, the village breathes. It breathes in the same way it always does, through windows, through cracked doors, through the holes in a roof that no one feels quite like fixing. And if you listen carefully, if you sit very still just by the ivy-covered wall at the edge of the square, you might hear it whisper, "Everything's just fine." Nothing much happens again. By mid-morning, the village is, well, not busy. It's not quiet either. Not exactly. It exists in that in-between space where things happen, but so slowly and softly that no one feels the need to name them. There is a clatter somewhere far off. Maybe a dropped bucket. Maybe just a goat stepping in something it oughtn't. But mostly, the air is filled with small sounds. The creak of a shutter. The brush of a broom on a wooden stoop. The flap of a linen sheet on a line. Someone coughs politely in the distance. The sky doesn't commit to anything. Clouds drift lazily across it like sheep with nowhere to be. The sun peeks out now and then, decides it's too soon, and slips back behind a soft gray curtain. No rain, no wind, just a sky content to keep everyone guessing. Down by the well, a woman draws water, not because she's run out. She hasn't. But because it's what she does every day at this time. The rope squeaks a little as the bucket rises. She checks its weight, nods once, and walks away slowly, water sloshing just a little with each step. A boy chases a feather for no reason. He doesn't catch it. That's not the point. In the square, 3 chickens debate something serious. Or at least, they seem to. Their heads bob, their feathers ruffle, their feet scratch at the cobbles like scribes recording a disagreement no one else will ever understand. An old man sits on a bench with a half-peeled apple. He's not eating it. He's just turning it in his hand, studying the red and green skin like it might reveal a secret. He hums. Not a tune, just a note. It sounds like the inside of a wooden drawer. At the bakery, the morning loaves are done. Not sold, just done. The gentle kind of tired. It's sometime after midday now. Exactly when? No one checks. The sun, at last, has decided to show itself. Just barely. It spills light across the village like honey, slow, golden, a little sticky in places. It pools in windowsills, warms the stone paths, and nudges the backs of benches that haven't been sat on all morning. And with that sunlight comes the tiredness. Not the heavy, aching sort. No, this is the gentle kind of tired. The kind that feels like a soft hand on your shoulder or a warm blanket pulled up a little higher. In the bakery, the loaves have cooled. The shelves sit still. A few crumbs have fallen. The baker leans against the wall with her eyes nearly closed. She isn't asleep. She's just not moving. In her lap, a small towel covers her hands like a second thought. Outside, 2 villagers speak without speaking. They lean on opposite sides of a fence and exchange long nods, slow shrugs, and half smiles. No one is in the mood for full conversations. Over in the cloister, the monks have begun their afternoon silence, which, truthfully, is not very different from their morning silence. Brother Martin rests beneath the fig tree. His hands are folded across his middle, and his eyes are shut. The sun dapples his robe, making him look a bit like a well-aged book. Down by the stream, the water hums to itself. A dragonfly pauses on a reed. A cow blinks once, chews nothing, and forgets what it was thinking. In one cottage, a woman peels apples slowly. The peels fall in perfect spirals onto the table. She's not counting, she's not baking. She just enjoys the way the knife moves, the way the apple turns gently in her hand. A small breeze drifts through the open window and carries the scent of fruit to the lane. Her husband naps in the next room, or maybe he's just lying down with his eyes shut. Either way, no one interrupts him. In the field beyond the forge, Edric is lying on his back. His arms are stretched out, his legs too. The grass underneath him is cool. He watches clouds form and reform, then drift into nothing again. He sees a sheep, then a ship, then a boot, or maybe a loaf of bread. It's hard to say. He yawns without closing his mouth all the way. The yawn travels quietly down the hill, through the trees, into the market square, and all the way to the bishop's cottage, where the old man feels it before he knows what it is. He yawns, too. A small one, dignified. Lady Marjorie opens one eye, narrows it, and yawns as well, and with a great flare. Even the wind has grown sleepy. It no longer dances, it drapes. Curtains sway like they've forgotten how to flutter. A flag hangs from the chapel wall, limp but content. The only truly alert creatures in the village are the bees. But even they move more slowly now. They're buzzing quieter, more thoughtful. They circle a lavender bush 3 times before deciding to sit down and reconsider everything. And somewhere, on the porch of a cottage with ivy on one side and a cracked pot on the other, a rocking chair sways without a push, not because someone moved it, but because it remembers being moved. This is the gentle kind of tired, the kind that asks for nothing, the kind that waits for evening, waits for supper, waits for the stars. There's no need to rise, no reason to rush. The world is warm, the air is soft, and everything, absolutely everything, can wait just a little longer. When the lanterns come out, the day sighs again, a long, slow exhale that starts somewhere beyond the trees and rolls through the village like a warm tide. Shadows lengthen, birds grow thoughtful, and the color drains gently from the stones and rooftops, not vanishing, just softening. The sun lowers itself behind the hills, as if reluctant to go, but too polite to linger. And then, almost unnoticed, the first lantern is lit. It flickers once, then steadies. It happens differently in every home. In the baker's cottage, it's a stubby candle placed in a little glass jar near the oven. The wax has been reused many times, patched together from a dozen past evenings. It gives off a soft smell of honey and flour and thyme. At the bishop's window, a small oil lamp is lit with practiced fingers. The flame dances as he shields it from the draught with one hand. He doesn't say anything, but he smiles. Lady Marjorie watches the flame with the intense interest of one who suspects it might be edible. Down by the stream, 2 children carry tin lanterns with thin handles and lids that rattle when they walk. They swing them slowly, carefully, pretending to be brave adventurers on a quiet expedition. The adventure ends at the edge of the barley field, where they sit and whisper secrets they will forget by morning. In the cloister, the hallway is dotted with small bowls of light. Each one is placed precisely, though no one remembers who decided where they should go. Brother Odo walks the line, checking the wicks, nodding softly when he finds one that's burned too low. He replaces it with another. Everything continues. The forge, still cold, is dark, but Edric lights a small candle anyway, not to work, just to watch. He sets it on the anvil and leans on his elbows, chin in hands, eyes reflecting the golden flame. It flickers back at him as if thinking the same slow thoughts. He imagines the candle is melting time, just a little. As the lanterns appear, So too do the sounds of evening, not loud ones, just familiar ones. A kettle clinking gently against its hook, the quiet scrape of a wooden spoon in a shallow bowl, a chair creaking under a body that has sat in it 100 times before. In one cottage, a flute plays a wandering melody, unsure of where it's going, but in no hurry to get there. The notes float out the open window and into the lane, where they curl around fences and doorways like curious cats. No one claps. No one needs to. It's not a performance. It's just a sound that belongs to the evening. And above, the sky has grown deep and blue. Not yet night, but close. One star. Then another. A dog yawns. A gate closes with a wooden click. Someone says, "Well, in the way that means the day is over and nothing more needs to be said." The lanterns continue to glow, soft halos of firelight tucked behind curtains, nestled beside shoes, resting on wooden shelves next to folded cloth and gently steaming mugs. No two flames are the same, but they all agree on one thing. The day has done its job. Now it is time to rest. And the village, in no particular order, agrees.